It is the end of Tayshia for Bachelor Nation as she is leaving Bachelor podcasts permanently. Hey guys, and welcome back to another shared news. We've got a lot to get into on all of this Bachelor podcast updates. But before we get into it, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring that bell so you never miss out on any future videos. As always, I'm your host, Zachary Reality, joined by Morgan Wright. And Morgan, shocking news to wake up to this morning as it has been revealed Tayshia will no longer be working for Bachelor Nation. Morgan, what were your first initial thoughts when you read this?
So I'm just a little bit confused, right? We're getting a lot of different messaging. I know we'll get into all the details, but is she just leaving Clickbait? Is she leaving Bachelor Nation as a whole? So I know you will have all of the details for me, Zach. So I'm excited to learn more about it.
There definitely is some speculation of Tayshia's future with the franchise and why she may or may not be out permanently, but she is going to be out of the podcast. We know that for a fact. So Tayshia did start off working with the Bachelor produced podcast called Clickbait with Hannah Ann and Grocery Store Joe. Once Hannah Ann left the show, they replaced Hannah with Natasha. And it felt very convenient how all of these podcast hosts ended up in Bachelor in Paradise, even former Bachelorette Becca Kufrin. And that is the first topic of conversation that we need to talk about, Morgan, because it just felt very obvious that Grocery Store Joe was getting this like edit, the godfather of Paradise. Natasha was getting a great edit. Becca was back. What were your kind of initial thoughts to seeing all of these Bachelor podcasters in Paradise this summer?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't even remember that Hannah Ann was like the OG of the
Uh-huh.
Clickbait podcast. I feel like I started listening to it when Tayshia came on. So, I mean, look, Bachelor producers want these cast members to be at the top of people's minds so that they do then go back and listen to the podcast once the season is over. I mean, specifically, the first one that comes to my mind is Natasha, last season, she had a huge storyline on Bachelor in Paradise. And like I said, I didn't even know that Hannah Ann used to be a host. And now I'm like, oh, I got to go listen to what Natasha said on Clickbait about, her situation with Brendan. So I feel like this is definitely a game of chess for the producers when it comes to who's hosting these podcasts. But what does it mean specifically for Tasha?
We are going to get into Tayshia, but I thought it was important we talk about all of the Bachelor podcast hosts because it is kind of convenient and strategic how they put these hosts in certain situations. Like, no one expected Becca to come back. And with the Natasha thing, I mean, Natasha was obviously played by Brendan. That was obvious. For everyone could see, and everyone really did rally around Natasha. It was the justice for Natasha, and we wanted justice for Natasha. But I also kind of felt like, she wasn't the biggest name in Bachelor Nation before Paradise. She didn't make it to the top 4 on Peter's season. So of course we were going to fall in love with Natasha, but I also felt like I fell in love with Becca this past season in Paradise. And I thought it was kind of convenient how Grocery Store Joe was the one who kicked off Chris and Elena during that scene. Morgan, does any of this resonate with you now that I'm like putting this in your head?
Well, yeah, the world of social media and podcasting and even TV is changing very, very quickly. Just because you see something play out on TV, it's like nowadays with social media, it's like, okay, that was 6 months ago. We want to check up with them right now. So it's kind of like what I said before, the producers of The Bachelor want these people to be at the top of our minds. And at the end of the day, it's all a money making machine, right? It's like, yes, they're making money on the TV show, but they also have these other outlets that people are now going to, in the off season, maybe to catch up on things that don't happen while the cameras are rolling. And it's really a way for The Bachelor to make money, whether the show is airing or not.
No, absolutely. Especially with so many podcasts these days and so many Bachelor podcasts these days. The Bachelor wanted to have, these podcasts set up so that they could get the exclusive interviews with the people who get eliminated from the show and get all of the tea first before anyone else. So it definitely makes sense why they are trying to make money and align these certain hosts with their Bachelor Nation shows. And when it was time for Michelle's season of The Bachelorette, they put Tayshia on the Bachelor Happy Hour podcast with Becca to have two previous bachelorettes together as they put Tia, who was on Paradise, to fill in on Clickbait. And obviously, Tayshia was the host of The Bachelorette with Caitlyn, and they did an amazing job, and we loved them. But once it came time for Tayshia to unfortunately end her relationship with Zack, and that relationship did not work out. It was kind of interesting how they forced her to talk about it at the Men Tell All on Michelle's season. And after the Men Tell All, when it was time for After the Final Rose, Tayshia was nowhere to be seen. And she said it was because of Omicron in the city and maybe she was exposed. But then a couple days later, we saw Tayshia flying on a plane. She was at the airport going to Orange County to see her families for the holidays. So that is when I first realized that something might be up. So do we kind of think that Tayshia is leaving the show because she didn't like that they made her talk about Zack? Or do you think the show wanted to push her out because her relationship ended?
Well, I don't think that the show wanted to push her out because the relationship ended, because in my opinion, I would be down to see Tayshia as the Bachelorette 2.0. I mean,
Me
she didn't
too.
even get her own full season. The guys were not handpicked for her. They were picked for Claire, and Tayshia came in and saved the season. I mean, she didn't have her own After the Final Rose. She didn't have her own Men Tell All. At least she wasn't there. So Tayshia really got the short end of the stick when it comes to that. My other thought is maybe she's trying to work things out with Zach. I mean, from what we know about their breakup, is that he didn't really like to be in the spotlight as much as she did. So maybe there's something going on behind the scenes where she has maybe come to the realization that she wants this relationship with Zach to work. If that's the case, she's going to have to maybe, I don't wanna say give up things for Zach, but maybe kinda tweak some things here and there, and maybe not be on TV all year long or be on this Bachelor podcast all year long in hopes that it will smooth things over with her now ex-fiancé, Zach. I don't know. That might be a crazy opinion, but I feel like it could happen.
No, I think you're hopeful, as well as a lot of Bachelor Nation, that Zack and Tayshia will get back together. And I definitely think it's not out of the question that they could get back together. I mean, she has liked a couple of his recent Instagram posts. She also did Instagram Reels where she made two drinks, and one of them I think was a mocktail, and one of them was an alcoholic drink. Why is she making a mocktail? And unless she's with Zack, who is sober, like that is just like those little things if you want to
Yeah.
read into those. So I think it's possible. However, I personally think that Tayshia and Zack are done. I think they're like, friendly and amicable, but I kind of think that that ship has sailed. But I just kind of feel like my perspective is that maybe that because she's not in a happy bachelor relationship anymore, they might not want her, to host the podcast and represent the franchise as much because they want these happy couples to represent the franchise. And now that Tayshia is in a failed bachelor relationship, maybe they're taking a step back. And another, reason to feed to my theory is that Serena P is now taking over the Bachelor Happy Hour podcast with Becca Kufrin. Becca is in a happy relationship with Thomas. Serena is in a happy relationship with Joe. So, what do we think about Serena kind of taking over and my theory?
Well, you definitely could be onto something. I never thought about it in that regard, to where all of these hosts actually are coupled up with another member of Bachelor Nation. When I first heard that Serena was taking over, I didn't really have a strong reaction one way or another, but I will say when I listened in, I was very pleasantly surprised by her. I think she's a really great host. I think she navigates conversations with Becca really well. So I mean, I guess if that's what they're going for, it was a good pick. I'll just say that I was pleasantly surprised by her because she seems quieter, right? She seems more
Yeah.
reserved, but she had no problem at all getting in there and hosting a podcast. And I mean, I love Joe, I love Serena. So anything they do, I'm going to be a fan of.
Yeah, and I think the reason why we talk about these podcasts so much is because these people on The Bachelor, they're not hosts, they don't go to journalism school, they just go on this reality show, and now they're in the public eye, and they get these opportunities to do hosting and podcasting and all that kind of stuff that people like us maybe train for and study and go to school for, but, they get the opportunity because they are in the public eye and have this exposure, and then they have to kinda navigate how to have these conversations because it's not something that anyone could just pick up and do and host a podcast. even though they probably have so much producers and so much help. But I do think Serena does a good job. And I also think Becca does a really good job too. So I want to tip my hat off to her. But it looks like Tayshia is going to be gone from the podcast. We don't know the future of The Bachelorette, if she is going to be hosting the next Bachelorette season with Caitlyn. We know Jesse Palmer is the new host of The Bachelor and the new face. So do you think that Jesse will host The Bachelorette this year, or do you think Tayshia and Caitlyn could possibly come back for that?
I think Jesse Palmer is here to stay. I think they want one host. I think they want an older host, not so much a peer to the contestants. I thought it was so funny when they did that scene in Clayton's season where they're like, Jesse, are you married? And he's like, sure am, so these girls know Jesse Palmer is off limits. But like I said before, there were some things that, in my opinion, just didn't work with both Caitlyn and Tayshia. When they would come in and say, it's the final rose tonight, and only one of them would speak, but two of
Yeah.
them would be standing there. There was just some little awkward things. And the same with the men tell all. And after the final rose, you can tell that that was just not their strong suits. And Jesse Palmer has been a host for decades. I mean, yes, he was on TV, but he also, I don't know if he went to school for it, but I do know he's an ESPN commentator. He has hosted other things. So I feel like we're going to be seeing Jesse for a long time.
Yeah, I think so too. And I kind of think that Jesse is going to be hosting The Bachelorette. And then my prediction is that they're going to have Wells host Paradise. And then Jesse can have his summer off because it is a full time job to be a full time Bachelor host. And I don't know if anybody is really up for that, like Chris Harrison was, to live, breathe, and host Bachelor Nation. There is so much to think about here with Tayshia leaving. Was it a mutual decision? Will she ever be back? Could she possibly be another Bachelorette 2.0, like you said, Morgan? I know a lot of fans are shipping for that. I would be down for that. I am a huge Tayshia stan. But I also kind of think, to round this up, that I feel like it was more Tayshia's decision to walk away from the franchise. Even though the producers want these like happy couples, I still feel like Tayshia probably felt that it was her time to move on to other things. And maybe because of her breakup with Zack, it would just felt a little too heavy for her to be so involved in Bachelor Nation, especially when they exploited her breakup on the Men Tell All. So that's kind of my final say in that. Morgan, do you have a final say in all of this before we ask our viewers what they think in the comments?
I mean, same for you. I feel like Tasha is rising, 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 rising. And at the end of the day, as she gets bigger, sometimes the bachelor maybe would be holding her back from new opportunities and, new open doors. And she can't walk through those doors if she's in a contract with the Bachelor franchise. So I feel like her work here is done. I mean, obviously I would welcome her with open arms if she decided to stay, but she's not slowing down anytime soon,
Yeah.
and we're going to be seeing lots of her just in a different way.
I absolutely agree. I think Tayshia is a star and there's big things in her future. And we want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think of Tayshia leaving Bachelor Nation? Do you think it was a mutual decision? Are you on to the producers? Do you think Tayshia and Zack will get back together? Let us know in the comments. And before you go, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe so you never miss out on any future Bachelor Nation content. As always, I am your host, Zachary Reality, joined by the lovely Morgan Wright. Our social media handles are on the screen right now, so be sure to give us a follow, come say hello, tell us your theories, and we will catch you guys in the next one. See you later.
Bye.